Hey folks, Brian here, coming to you from my top secret hideout. And today I am continuing my series on hymn stories, and today is How Great Thou Art. In 1978, the performing rights organization ASCAP named the song as the all-time outstanding gospel song in America. It is consistently listed as one of the greatest hymns ever written, usually listed number 2 right behind Amazing Grace. So the story of it goes that on a summer day in 1885, Carl Boberg, who was a 26-year-old Swedish pastor, former sailor, was returning from a hike in the countryside when a terrible thunderstorm came up out of nowhere, forcing him to take shelter in an abandoned farmhouse. While waiting out the storm, he watched in amazement God's power as the lightning and thunder crashed all around him. And he said, quote, "Then, just as quickly as it came, the storm cleared, leaving a crystal clear sky. A rainbow appeared and a crisp, clean breeze blew across the fields. When I arrived home, the lake across from my home reflected like a mirror, the sky above, and the church bell rang out in the distance. It was then that I fell to my knees in humble praise to the God who holds all of creation in his hands." And so he wrote it. It was originally a poem, and it was published, but it didn't really catch on, and it just didn't seem to, it seemed to just be forgotten. However, 3 years later, someone out there liked it, and they matched the words with a traditional Swedish melody. And when Boberg found out about it, he quickly published the poem again in his own newspaper that he was publishing at the time. And he published it with the musical notation added. And like I said, it was originally in Swedish, and the song that we know as How Great Thou Art is a little different. I'll get to that. But this is the literal translation from the Swedish. "O great God, when I behold that world you have created with your omnipotent word, how your wisdom guides the threads of life, and all beings are fed at your table." And the refrain goes, "Then my soul bursts forth into praise. O great God, O great God. Then my soul bursts forth into praise. O great God, O great God." Verse 2, "When I consider the high wonders of heaven, where golden vessels plow the ether blue, and sun and moon measure the moments of time and alternate as two bells go." Verse 3, "When I hear the voice of thunder in the storm roaring, and the blades of lightning run out of the sky, when the cold, fresh winds of the rain whistle, and the bow of promise shines in my sight." Verse 4, "When the summer wind blows over the fields, when flowers scent the spring's shore, when thrushes trill in the green tents from the silent dark edge of the pine forest." So that's the original literal translation from the Swedish. And then in 1907, Manfred von Glan, translated the song into German. And in 1912, a Russian pastor, Ivan Prokhanov, translated it into Russian. And in the 1920s, Stuart K. Hine and his wife, who were from England and became missionaries in Poland, they heard it. And Stuart was so deeply moved that he heard it in Russian, he translated it into English, and he tweaked the music and the lyrics some. So it's not actually a translation, it's kind of like the Living Bible. You know, he kind of put it in his own words, but the idea is, he took the basic idea. So he translated 3 verses into English, and then the 4th verse he added later in England during World War II, inspired by the longing of refugees to return home. Mr. Hine is quoted as saying, "Young people could be heard raising their voices on hikes in the mountains, lifting the song in praise, with such a simple melody and words that most could relate to. The song became a favorite as it traveled across Europe." So then, in 1954, J. Edwin Orr, who was a British theologian and evangelist, traveled to India, and he heard it. He was there to preach, but while he was there, he heard the English version of How Great Thou Art, sung by an Indian choir in the state of Assam in northeastern India. So he was so impressed by the song that he brought it back to America and had it performed at a conference for college students where he was speaking. So jump to that, the college conference. So pause for a moment. Okay, unpause. We'll fix that in post. Anyway, Tim Spencer was a world-renowned singing cowboy who in his early years co-founded the group Sons of the Pioneers with Roy Rogers and Bob Nolan. In 1949, Tim gave his life to Christ and turned his attention to gospel music. He eventually founded Manna Music. And in 1954, Spencer's kids attended one of J. Edwin Orr's college conferences. So they heard How Great Thou Art and they loved it and they told their dad about it. So their dad actually got the rights to the song and it was published in a pamphlet with the music and the lyrics. And as the story goes, the Billy Graham team was in London for a crusade and were given that pamphlet. And so that's where George Beverly Shea found that song. And they did it in 1955 in Toronto and it didn't really catch on. But then came the 1957 New York Crusade. It was in New York City at Madison Square Garden, and they had some other events at other places, but it was mostly at Madison Square Garden, and it ran for 16 weeks from May 15th to September 1st. And other people spoke there, Vice President Richard Nixon, Martin Luther King, Mordecai Ham, and others. But every service, like 100 services, they sang How Great Thou Art. Cliff Barrows was the music director and choir director for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. And he stated they were live on the radio during this time and the song was performed nightly. He said they sang it 100 times during that campaign because the people wouldn't let them stop. So people began to hear it who had never heard it. They began to request it, and it soon spread across the country and became a favorite hymn of the church because of George Beverly Shea and the Billy Graham team. And this is a quote from Billy Graham. "The reason I like How Great Thou Art is because it glorifies God. It turns Christians' eyes toward God rather than upon themselves. I use it as often as possible because it is such a God-honoring song." So that's the story of How Great Thou Art. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. I'm going to put a couple links in the comments to a couple of versions of this song that are just amazing, and you have to hear them. So thanks again, and stay salty, my friend.